Hey friends, welcome back to the Happy Homeowner Podcast, Outdoor Edition. My name is Dan Keller, and I believe that owning a home is the largest and most valuable asset we have, second to our time. As a veteran mortgage professional, investor, and Puget Sound angler, my commitment is to bring you content each week that will fill each one of these buckets in your life. Jump on board with us today, enjoy the show, and we'll see you back in the marina. Hey friends, welcome back to the outdoor edition of the Happy Homeowner Podcast. I'm sitting here in a grown-ups version of a kid's candy store. Dude, this is seriously the colors and everything. We're gonna do some steelhead fishing today, and this is gonna be I was so excited to get to do this with you guys. One, I have no idea what you guys are going to talk about today. All of this stuff looks foreign to me, but I grew up, funny story, I grew up on the Pilchuck River, Bunk Foss Road, Snohomish, Washington, and I grew up hiking down through the woods with my dad, steelhead fishing, winter steelhead fishing, back when the Pilchuck River was an epic fishery. Now, it's not so great today, but there's still steelhead here in the Pacific Northwest. Absolutely. But from the Pilchuck River to, man, I was telling Ben before the podcast, fishing, hiking in with my buddies, fishing Robe Valley, dude, Canyon Creek, Chapel Hill, and Chapel Hill Bridge, and all these really good fishing holes for steelhead. We're going to show you how to do this yourself. We're also going to show you how to do it on the water if you have a boat. But you got one of the best, in my opinion, steelhead fishermen in the Pacific Northwest, Ben Rosenbach with Mixed Metals Guide. He's a fishing guide, but Mixed Metals Outdoors. And you got Conner Martinis, best sporting goods shop in the area.
Yeah, I'll sell you the gear.
Right here in Everett. So we've got all the gear here. Everything we're going to talk about today, from rods to reels to line to this gear, you can get with Conner. And then at the end, we're going to give you an opportunity if you want to book some time with Ben on the river. He's opened his winter bookings now for steelhead fishing. But hey, welcome, guys. Hey. I feel like I just saw you last week. We did we did a river coho, but let me give you a real quick overview of what we're going to do today if you're listening, because I want you to know what's ahead. So we're going to talk. We always do this. We talk about regulations and dates. Okay, Connor's going to start with that. We're going to talk about some hot spots. Okay, whether you're on a boat or you're hiking through the woods. And then your ideal gear. We're going to talk about the ideal gear, how to fish this stuff, and then we're going to give you some bonus material at the end. Conner and Ben are going to talk about how they're going to merge mono, the best knot for merging braid to mono, because you're going to need to do this if you're going to do this fishery. And we'll give you a couple of bonus tips at the very end. So let's start with some regulations and some dates, Conner.
Okay, let's see. Well, the Pilchuck actually just opened December 1st. Same with the North Fork of the Stilly. That opened December 1st. The Pilchuck usually picks up another month. I think it's open for the month of December and then November. Don't mark me on that. I would check for sure, but we usually end up fishing it around Christmas time. That's always a good time to be on the Pilchuck.
The later, the better.
Yeah. The North Fork of the Stilly, that's a lot of guys fish up toward the forts and ponds. That's a great spot to fish. You got the Skykomish, you got Reeder Ponds.
Snoqualmie.
The Snoqualmie's open. What is that, Tokal Creek?
Yep.
Tokal Creek's
already
open.
Getting fish back.
Now, if you go down south, you got the Cowlitz. I don't know if that's open yet.
Cowlitz is open.
Okay.
Pretty much everything's open.
Yeah, I think everything opens pretty much December 1st.
Cool.
We got a lot of opportunity this year. We've got some Grays Harbor rivers that haven't been open in 4 or 5 years that we're finally getting back on with some great hatchery opportunity. Lewis, Kalama. I mean, there's opportunity all over the state.
Yep.
There really is. Yes, wild steelhead numbers are down. Yes, the state's cutting hatchery programs all over the place, but we are where we are. And there's still fish to be caught.
Yeah.
Yep. In my growing up, this is my Christmas, right?
Love
December 1st was Christmas. We'd all pile into Fortson at dark 30 in the morning, and we'd glow ball till it got light out, and those days are somewhat behind us. I mean, there's still a few summer runs trickling around up there. Yes, there's winter fish showing up already. I've heard reports of fish in Fortson and Reeder at Tokal. They're showing up everywhere. Hell, we got a steelhead last week on the Skagit coho fishing, which is really unheard of. Hearing a fish getting caught out in the saltwater at Lagoon Point and Bush Point, which we haven't heard of in a long time. So definitely our ocean conditions have been fantastic. We've had great coho returns, Chinook returns. I fully expect steelhead season
I think so too.
To have turned that corner too.
Yeah. Also the coast. I talked to a couple guys fished the Bogoshiel and the Kalawa. They caught a handful of fish there. So you got a lot of coastal rivers that are open. Hatchery fish there as well. There's a lot of opportunity for sure.
Yeah, it's just going to get better. That's what I recall growing up. Christmas. Every Christmas morning, my dad and I would hike down through the woods, like Ben just said, in the dark. Hanging on to my dad's, back end of his jacket, carrying my rod, trying not to snag it on a tree. And same thing, fishing the car body hole. One of the best, the nicest steelhead I ever caught was right under that Highway 2 bridge. Yeah, Christmas morning, bring it back up and stuff. So we're getting there. We're early December right now, you guys. And just for some reference, now this could be, I'm curious to see how Ben describes this. What the hell is a steelhead? Is it a trout or is it a salmon?
Seagoing rainbow trout.
There you go. Yep.
It's a trout.
It's a trout that acts like a salmon. It's a confused trout, right?
Yeah.
So, I was talking to a colleague of mine today, and I told him we were going to do this podcast, and he was like, "What's a steelhead?" And I said, "Well, it depends on who you ask." But I basically said it's a confused salmon. It acts like a trout, looks like a salmon, but acts like a salmon, looks like a trout. So, okay, so we got dates, we got some regulations. Let's say you catch a wild steelhead. Can you keep it?
Not locally, no. But any wild steelhead you can't keep anywhere.
There's some tribal systems over on the coast that you can keep a wild steelhead. That is it.
That's it.
Salmon's a notorious one where guys keep wild steelhead. They're all brood stocked, pretty much hatchery fish, but they have a fin on them.
Might run. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and that's where you're hiring a tribal guide to take you to the river.
Okay.
Another one the guys fish there is Cook Creek.
Yep.
That's another big one over on the coast.
Yep.
The salmon.
Yep. The salmon's a huge one.
Yeah.
But you're hiring a tribal guide, which is, I've done it before. It's absolutely a ball, and you're catching monsters.
I think you were telling me about that last year. Yep. Wow. Yep. So I'm seeing a lot of, speaking of regulations, seeing a lot of hooks here. Can you use a treble hook? And follow-up question, barbs.
99% of our steelhead fisheries are single point barbless.
Okay. So you're taking these and you're just swapping them out.
Just like
coming with the treble.
When we go through the gear, I'll explain all that.
Okay.
Single point barbless.
You're going barbless.
Protect wild fish. Is basically what it is.
You basically have to have a hatchery program in place on a river, an active hatchery program in place on the river to use bait. Other than that, we're single barbless, non-buoyant lure restrictions, whatever it may be sure and check your regulations.
Okay.
1.2, that's really important for us as anglers, as sportsmen, as conservationists. We just had probably the best salmon season I've seen in, I don't know, 20 years. I couldn't even 100%. Tell you when. We should all have plenty of fish in our freezer. There is no reason to kill a wild steelhead. There's really not. Nope. None of us are starving to death. Please be careful when you handle these fish. We are fighting like hell to get ESA listed fish numbers up to the point where we start getting fisheries back, start broodstock programs, whatever that may be. There was just a deal. They had, what's his name on the outdoor line here last weekend, the Region 4 manager. God, I can't remember his name. Anyway, talking about Tokal Creek starting a winter broodstock program up there, which all is going to depend on wild fish numbers, right? We've got to have enough wild fish in the system to even think about having these angler assisted broodstock programs, which are basically that's what the Quinaults are doing over there. It's being done all up and down Oregon. It's really successful and really man, I would love to see it going in the state.
Yeah.
I would absolutely love to have that in the state.
Well, and they've been doing it with chum salmon, and
Yep.
look what's happened to the sky this year.
Yep.
I mean, you had 2 years of almost a non-existent fish on the sky, and now this year you had. I mean, I've multiple occasions where guys are telling me how good it was.
Really?
Yeah.
So on the Skagit too, they're doing it on the Skagit and the sky.
It absolutely works.
Yeah,
for sure.
Any other regulations that we need to know about? Average angler?
No, single point barbless.
Okay.
The sky you can use bait. The stilly you can use bait.
Yep.
A lot of the bait that we're using too
Active
is
hatcheries.
I like using prawns.
Yeah.
You get prawns from the grocery store, frozen prawns, and a lot of that, like tipping the jigs with that,
Yeah.
it works really well.
Cool. Yeah, we'll get into bait here in a second too. But before we do that, we got two different types of people here. I got a 16-year-old son that just absolutely worships the ground both of you guys walk on. And he doesn't have a riverboat yet. He's not that good yet, nor will I let him go without going on 100 trips with Ben. But so he's walking in and trying to fish certain places. So let's talk about some places here in the Puget Sound, the north end, where people can go and actually, hike in or walk in and go, fish for these steelhead.
I mean, forts and ponds, reader ponds, which is up on the sky. The pilchuck, a lot of it you can walk into. There's a lot of access on the pilchuck. Okay. Those would be like the three that really stand out to me, where a guy who doesn't have a boat can be pretty successful and cover some river.
Okay. What's some gear that you recommend if you're going to wade? I know there's neoprene. Is there any specific gear that you guys like if you're going to go out? It's
freezing
cold right now, very, very cold. Plus, you're going to have to cross the pilchuck, or you're going to have to maybe cross a river. What do you guys recommend? What do you guys like for gear?
I use the Sims breathable waders. I think they're the G. I have the older ones. I think it's G3.
Okay.
They're breathable, but you just layer underneath it. I always get a size bigger so I can pack on some layers underneath of it.
Cool.
And they're not boot foot. You get boots with them, so they're stocking foot. That's what I like to use. Neoprenes are great too. They keep you warm.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Okay.
In the modern world we live in, there's no reason to be cold anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to get cold. Yesterday I was telling you guys, when we kicked the sled off the trailer, it was 27 degrees. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And, Joey hops in and I'm like, oh God, you guys, we got ice, and this and that. If you layer yourself up correctly, I don't think, other than my fingertips yesterday, which I was still dipping in the hot water tank, I never got cold.
Yeah.
No. Running up river, your face gets a little cold. And the same thing with especially fishing from the beach.
Yeah.
You're hiking.
Yeah.
You're sweating.
That's another thing you need to be careful of is overdressing. For some of this stuff can be just as dangerous as getting cold. That with the merino wools, whether it's socks or shirts or long underwear or whatever, that's been something that's kind of come into the industry here in the last 10, 12 years.
Yeah.
The puffy jacket.
I was going to say, I know they look goofy, but the puffy jacket.
Yeah, I'm wearing one today.
Yeah.
You don't have to get a great big huge puffy jacket. That Sims ones I got over there is, it's sweatshirt thin.
Yeah.
Layer up. You can always take it off, but you can't put it on if you don't have it.
That's right.
The Sims waders are really important. Make sure you put a wading belt on with them in case you do go under. That's a big safety factor. Neoprene, I wore them for years. It's more of a duck hunter thing now, just because these breathable waders are so much easier to move around in. There's a lot of good waterproof clothing out now. Sims makes a great jacket. Bass Pro Shops makes a great jacket. There's a lot of options.
I just use my hunting stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
All my hunting stuff works excellent.
Sitka stuff,
First Light, Kuyu, all that stuff works really well.
Grundens has a great line of gear out right now.
The one thing that I like that I learned from you is you have that little pouch, that little quarterback pouch. It has a buckle on it, and it snaps right here. And it's
is that the heater?
It's basically this little pouch.
It's got a rechargeable battery.
Yeah, and it's heated. You stick your hands
Best
in there.
$150.
What do you call that? Because I was fishing with you on the cowlets last year, and you had that. What was that called?
I don't know. I
call it the QB pouch, man.
Yeah,
QB pouch.
It's basically what it is. The warmingstore.com is a I believe it's a little drop shipping company, but they have every article of clothing you could ever imagine that's heated, from vests to socks to shirts to anything you could imagine to put a little heater in. Is available to you. One thing I will say, don't buy the cheapest one.
Right.
That one, I have 3 of those little hand warmer muffs now. And the first one I bought 4 years ago. I paid $170 for it, and it's still operating. A friend of mine they had one that was like $70, and the battery in it lasts about 10 minutes, right? They're really neat. You can pull the battery out, you plug it in at night. I have 3 of them, like I said, so I have all 3 of them charged when I get in the boat each day.
Those things are awesome.
I found it right here. So if you go to warmingstore.com, or you just Google, it's the G-Tech Sports Heated Hand Warmer Pouch 3.0. They have a bunch of different colors. Hey, Connor, they have a pink one for you.
Beautiful.
Hey,
girl
Shalene
coming
has
along
one.
here.
My wife has one that she uses for search and rescue,
No, this is great. $165, you guys. So the reason why I brought up gear is, gosh, it can really make for a miserable day on the water if you're out in the December and January. So
pack rain jacket. Always have a rain jacket. I pack rain jackets in the middle of July. I always have one. You just never know. You get wet and the wind picks up, dude.
It's not just about wet. It's about wind too.
It chills you to the bone, and that'll ruin your whole day.
Well, I appreciate your guys' insight on that. Okay, so you guys have any questions on hot spots, where to go to fish, just pop by the store, message Connor. You can message. That's the thing I love about both of these guys. You can message them on their social media and say, hey, I live in North Snohomish County. We're thinking about going out. Where should we go? Or pop by the shop, grab some gear, and just ask Devin, ask Connor, and then they'll help you out on where to go. We're looking at a ton of gear here. What I wanted to do is let's start with rod, reel, line setup, and then we'll get to terminal tackle here in a minute. But you have, I see 3 different rods here. Obviously, one's you're running a plug over here. But let's talk about the 2 right in front of us, Ben. What do you have set up? And guys, you can get all of this gear. Come down and talk to Connor. You can pick it all up at John's.
There's 3 basic ways that we approach these things. Drift fishing, whether it's from the beach or from the boat, is probably the oldest method, tried and true, and has kind of lost its allure
for sure.
For this younger generation. I didn't bring a drift rod set up. It's pretty, it's as simple as fishing comes. It's a weight and a hook, right? Whether you have eggs or a yarny or whatever it may be, it's kind of a little bit of a lost art. We basically just do it out of the jet sled now, right? Side drifting. That's something that I'm probably not going to touch too much on, because I know most of what people want to hear about is the float fishing and the bobber dogging. So we'll start with the float fishing, because this is probably, if I can do this without making a mess out of everything, what most people are going to be interested in. Your drift boat fishermen and your shore fishermen, this is the tried and true, right?
It's very effective.
So I'm running, and I've said this before in other podcasts, and all of my gear, my salmon gear, my trolling gear, my spinning gear, whatever it may be, I have 2 different sizes of line, main line. And I have a 30-pound braid and I have a 55-pound braid, right? It keeps things super simple. That way, no matter where I go, from what fishery to what fishery, I know what's on every reel, right? So I have a 30-pound braid going to a 20-pound top shot. Now this is 20-pound Maxima Ultra Green, and the reason I run that is I like a little bit of stretch, right? Because I'm going to be running fluorocarbon leader down to, this is a 1/2 ounce AF5 Aero float. This is a great little do-it-all float. No matter if you've got beads, you've got jigs, whatever underneath this float, this is does a really good job of indicating if your gear is fishing right. Very visible and very durable.
Okay, Ben, give me that real quick. So let's show this horizontally. We can all hold it on one end. So what I've got right here, you guys, down here at my end, my left hand, you can see this right here in my black jacket. There's my mono, or excuse me, here's my braid to the mono. And we'll talk about the knot here in a minute. And then you've got about
what, 5 feet, 6
About
feet?
5 feet of 20.
Oh, it's going to be longer than that. It's probably 6 feet.
About 6 feet of mono.
Yep.
And you said 20 pound.
20 pound Maxima Ultra Green.
Maxima Ultra Green. Okay.
With a 1/2 ounce float.
Okay.
And I'll explain this stuff up here in a minute.
Now you got here. Let's pause here too, because you guys, I want you to see this.
I'll get back to that. Let me get.
You're
Let
gonna
me
come
get
back
down
to this
the bottom.
knot?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me get
Okay.
through the rest of it, and I'll explain all that to you.
Okay.
So that's a 1/2 ounce float with a 1/2 ounce inline lead.
Okay.
Right. And so on this particular rod, I've got just your typical little John's jig right here, the peach and white. This is a pretty big staple. I'm probably going to wander up to the Stilly this weekend. Is why this is on here. It's one of my favorites up on the Stilly. Yeah. And I really only run about 2 to 2.5 feet of, this is 12 pound Seagar and Vizex.
Let's bring this down toward Conner so you guys can see this on camera.
And the reason I only run about 2 feet is sometimes I'm only fishing in 2.5 feet of water, 2 feet of water.
Okay.
If you've got a 3 foot leader on here and 2 feet of water, now you're dragging your jig in the rocks.
Okay.
So I keep it really short.
So if you know you're going to be in deeper waters, are you going to lengthen that?
Nope.
No.
No,
Okay.
because when you're steelheading, you're covering water.
Okay.
So we might fish 10 feet of water. We might fish 2 feet of water. We're going to do it all in one day. This keeps it to where I'm not constantly having to cut leaders and retie. I can just adjust my bobber stop up at the top.
Okay. So we'll come back up here, but from your weight, your swivel here to your little fly.
About 2.5 feet. Right?
2.5 feet. And what do you have here? What is this same thing?
This is 12 pound Seagar and Vizex. So I always get lighter as you go down. Okay. So I have a 30 pound braid to a 20 pound bumper to a 12 pound leader.
Cool.
That way, if this gets hung up, this is going to break right here. I don't want it to break anywhere beyond this right here, because now you're retying a whole setup.
There you go.
Here, I just cut it off and tie a new jig on.
Cool.
Right.
Okay.
So as you move up it, though, this is important with float fishing. This is a sliding float. You put a little bead at the bottom of it to protect your knot, because this is going to be slipping up and down as you're casting. I have this is actually a Mad River fish pill, a big one, that I use for an indicator above this. And the reason for that is when this gear hits the water, this is all going to slip down. This little bead on top of it's going to come down. This bobber stop is going to catch right here. Boom. Yep. That bobber stop's how you control your depth.
There you go. Yep.
When this is fishing correctly, this little indicator sits right on top of the float, just like that. If this indicator right here is sitting on the water right here, something's wrong.
Okay.
Something's wrapped up, something's not working right. So that tells me when this is sitting on top of this, everything is fishing correctly.
Wow.
So, and I like the Dacron bobber stops. I'm not a big fan of the rubber ones. They break and they're a real pain in the butt going through these small eyelets on these rods. And if something happens to it and it comes off, I keep a little spool of Dacron in my bag to where I can just retie my own knot. I don't have to cut everything loose, slide a bobber stop up it, slide everything back up. I mean, this is a lot of moving working parts, right? I mean, there's 8 parts right here, you know?
Yeah. So you can see this right here next to Conner's ear, right here in the black.
Yep.
This is that bobber stop.
Yep.
And then you've got this about, I'd say, what, 3 feet?
Well, it all depends on what depth of water I'm fishing,
Got
right?
it.
So you're constantly adjusting that. So you can grab that bobber stop and slide it up and down the line.
If I'm fishing in 5 feet of water, I'm going to go longer. Okay.
You want to have that bobber stop 4.5 feet above this.
Okay.
And the way you tell, I mean, I always start shallower rather than deeper. If I walk into a hole and I think, okay, it's 4 feet deep, I'm going to set that bobber stop a foot above this to where I'm fishing at 3 feet.
Okay.
Go out, make a pass, move it up 6 inches, make a cast, let it go through. Okay, that bobber's still staying nice and straight up and down as it goes through. Make it another 6 inches, and what'll happen is eventually you'll start ticking rocks, and you'll see that it go like okay, I need to slide it back up, or back down 4 inches. Now I'm set, right?
Okay. Guys, these are the little reasons why they catch just a couple more fish than the average person.
And honestly, float fishing is great.
Yeah.
Really easy to do.
Yep.
I mean, you're fishing with a bobber. It looks like a lot of moving parts, but you're bobber fishing.
Yeah.
It covers a lot of water. You don't lose a lot of gear, right? So it's really, really efficient, and it works everywhere.
And it's adjustable.
And it's
You
adjustable.
can fish it in any water. When someone comes into my store and they're like, hey, I want to start steelhead fishing, this is the exact setup I'm going to give them.
Yeah,
I love
this is kind of the bread and butter.
So if someone has questions, because you got a lot going on, they can come in and you could set them up with this exact setup, this length. But the way I'm looking at this is you've got, what are we looking at, Ben? From your right hand, we're probably looking at about, 6-7 feet from your braid all the way down to the hook.
8 feet.
8 feet.
Yep.
Okay, so let's recap and we'll move on. So up here from the braid to the mono, you've got the 20-pound Maxima
Ultra green.
Okay,
you got it's a monofilament.
Monofilament.
Right?
Okay,
that's your stretch right there.
And you got about 4 feet of that down to your weight and your swivel.
6 feet.
6 feet of that to your weight and swivel.
Sometimes I'll tie this in at 8 or 10 feet.
Okay.
And the reason for this. The reason you don't want to just run straight mono on your float rod is braid floats, mono sinks. So when you throw this out and everything gets down and you suck up the slack and you've got that rod tip up in the air trying to hold the line off the water, the monofilament will sink and get caught in a current, and it's going to start to swing your float. Right, you want to let this go just as natural downriver as you can.
Yep.
But the reason we throw the mono in there is because it slips through here so much easier to get the gear.
So err on the longer side of this 20-pound leader than the shorter.
I don't time more than 8 feet.
Okay.
If I'm fishing 10 feet of water for steelhead, I'm in the wrong spot.
Okay.
Right? It's not very often that we find them in more than 10 feet. And if they are, I'm going to switch tactics anyway.
Okay. Cool.
Another thing with the bobber that we didn't touch on, as you saw, Ben, when this thing's fishing appropriately, this corky's going to be on top of the bobber like this. Now, your mono is going to travel faster than the braid. So your mono is going to eventually be beating your bobber downstream. And you're going to hear a lot of guys call it mending your line. So you're going to have a big bow in your line like this. And mending your line, that's when you see those guys up there flipping their line up above their bobber. They're mending their line. So the line's traveling faster. Their bobber now is sitting sideways. They mend the line back up forward, and it's going to sit back up.
Okay.
Yep. And that's important. Ben was just talking a natural presentation. If you're dragging it like this, your lure's dragging behind here, and it does not look natural at all. You mend that line, and that bobber sits straight up and down. Now that's a natural presentation to these fish.
Okay.
What's happening is when that bobber gets sideways like this, the float is not moving as fast as the river.
Right.
So it starts to tip it over like this, and you put pressure on this. Now you put pressure on this, and it's going to pick that gear up out of that 6 to 8 inches that you just made 5 casts trying to figure out exactly where bottom is. So it's really important. And as you get good at mending this, I mean, hell, you can fish 80 yards. You can let that float start up here, come in front of you, get down, and you can just feed line to it as it goes down.
And that's another bonus to having a 10.5-foot rod. I mean, us three guys are rather tall, so it's not as hard for us to either. A lot of the times guys will cast and they'll just hold their line out of the water and that thing will be floating
all the way down.
They won't have to mend their line at all. Now a shorter guy with a 10.5-foot rod, he can reach up and not have to do as much mending. I mean, it's not that hard to mend your line, but it's nice when you don't have to do it as much. Right.
And another key part about this float fishing is what you can actually put underneath the float. I mean, I've got a jig tied on here now. There's worm jigs. Bead fishing has become a big thing. That's kind of something we should probably, when I get into this stuff, we'll talk about how to rig that underneath the float. Bobber and eggs has caught more steelhead in this state than these beads have got years and years to ever catch up to it.
Bobber and shrimp.
Exactly. So it's really pretty universal.
100%.
As to what you're doing.
Man, you guys are bringing back memories of growing up. Little pink yarn, little light white and pink bobber, and a cluster of eggs.
That's the problem. They should have been memories from last year.
Yeah. I mean, I see eggs when I go out with you.
Boat,
and remember growing up doing those out in the freezing cold garage with my dad, borax and salmon eggs. So, all right, so we got a totally different setup here. The rod that's in front of you. Let's talk about what you got going on here.
This is something that came on, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago, and it's bobber dogging, right? Yep. And what it was, it's basically, I hate to call it this, it's training wheels for side drifters. Okay. I'm not trying to insult anybody. No. Hold on to that rod.
Gotcha.
Pull some more line out. So it's basically taking float fishing and drift fishing and mixing them together.
Yep.
So you have the same basic principle, same basic setup, except for you're going to allow enough line to slip through this float for this lead to drag on the bottom.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So basically, I tell people to kind of picture a crab pot.
Okay.
And it's the same basic get up, except for this float, the current of the river is going to pull this float down the river, which is going to drag this down the river, which is going to drag this down the river, right? It's tied a little bit differently as this top shot of monofilament. I think this one's, so this is one of my Cowlitz rigs. So this is probably 17 to 18 feet of monofilament on the top of this. Okay. With my bobber stop, I think it's probably set at about 14 feet above this lead.
Okay.
The reason for that is because I'm fishing this out of the sled, which you can do it the same from the beach. I would suggest moving your bobber stop up a little bit. You don't need quite so much drag when you're on the beach. This is going to hit the water. This lead's going to pull this line through here, and it's going to slip 12 to 14, 8, 10, 12, 14 feet of line through there before this is going to catch, right? You were doing this up down on the Cowlitz with me. The reason we have so much line out is the more you let out, the slower this is going to go. The longer this is going to stay over in the strike zone.
Okay.
I'll get tangled up under here. Again, just like with everything else, you're going to cast this out. You're going to let it hit the bottom. You're going to reel up 90% of the slack, leave a couple feet of line on the water, keep the rest of the line out of the water. And this, just like with the float fishing, if you're on the bank, you can walk 200 yards following this downriver. That's the neat part about it. I mean, you're going to have to walk back and start over again, but it really does. You know you're getting down. You know you're in the fish's face, and it stays there for a long time. The only drawback to it is now you're dragging bottom, and you're going to lose some gear, right? I mean, not as much as drift fishing. That's why we do it. Like down on the Cowlitz, this is pretty much all anybody's doing down there anymore. Everybody's in a great big line dragging some sort of a bobber dogger down the river now. Really, really, really effective way.
Now, is this bobber? Is this stopper? This is moving up and down your line, or is there some?
So this is all going to slide.
That's going to slide.
You can't even. The bobber stop for this right now is still in the reel.
Got it. I was going to say I'm not.
All that line's going to have to slip through it.
Okay.
So think about that as it hits the water and you're watching it go down. And you'll watch it. That bobber will be floating sideways as it's slipping through. And when it catches, it's going to snap like that. And this is going to be pointing downstream.
Got
right?
it.
That's why the bottom of this actual float is cupped on the bottom for grabbing water.
Catches water.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Some are, some aren't.
Okay.
And then it's basically you're just watching that. It looks just like a crab pot buoy sitting in the current. It just sits there like this. You're going to watch it drag it all the way downstream.
Okay. Now, as far as weight, lead. How do you know if you've got too much on there? You got to cut a little off. You got to switch sizes.
If that's just kind of getting a feel. If you have too much weight, what's going to happen? The lead's going to grab and it's going to pull this float under all the time.
Okay.
You don't want that float to go under unless this is completely hung up or you've got a fish on it, right? Usually somewhere, I mean, if you've got decent flows, somewhere between 1/4 and 1/2 ounce is going to work.
Okay.
Depending on how fast you want to go. I use pencil lead just because it's cheaper. And I go through hundreds of these rigs every year. Same thing though. 30-pound braid to a 20-pound top shot down to this is actually a 15-pound leader because it's a worm leader. I tie them a little stiffer. You can run anything and everything from beads to worms to bait, whatever you want behind them. A lot of guys are running those double bead rigs now. Works really, really well. But again, even with a double bead rig, you want everything to get smaller as it goes down because if this grabs, you want this to break instead of this, right? I want this swivel to pull out if the lead gets done instead of this breaking. just so I'm not retying an entire complete setup. You're just retying your leaders.
And when the lines, I remember you telling me this when we were bobber dogging. I haven't done this a lot, but I've done it. When that line's laying in the water and going to your bobber, you always told me you wanted it to be like
it's a little fish hook right on the end.
Little
of it.
fish hook.
You want
like
just about 2 to 3 feet of line left laying on the water. Try to pick the rest of it up out of the water. And the good part is, with these, you can put a little bit of pressure on the float and not screw up the way it's fishing.
Cool.
Right? Just because that lead's pulling away from you.
You pull the line off the water, it speeds up. You put more line in the water.
You put more line in the water, and this will speed up.
Okay,
and then if the water will start grabbing the line.
Yeah.
Right? You pick the line up, it's going to slow down.
Gotcha. Okay. Yep. That's what I thought.
So this setup looks a lot more simple than the previous one. So
it's really not.
It's not.
No, this one basically you have all the same stuff here.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you fish them basically the same way.
Stuff. You just this fish is slower than this does.
Okay.
This is dredge and bottom. This isn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. This you kind of manipulate your depth more, and you have to be more aware of the depth.
Yep.
This you cast you're side drifting with an indicator is basically what's going on here.
So this one, the previous one, the little fly, is that what you call that little pink peach thing? Jig.
That's a jig.
Okay. That first setup that you talked about, you're having that one suspended about a foot off the bottom, ideally, right?
Yep.
This one, you're actually using the lead to get you down there.
It's on the bottom.
On the bottom, and you're dragging. Okay.
And
dragging this.
Yep.
That little yellow chartreuse, that's a corky or probably a fish
so that's
bill.
bringing it up
it's a
just a
fish bill.
tad.
That brings it up off the bottom, so it'll hit and kind of.
That'll at least keep the hook.
Yep.
Yeah.
Out of the rock.
Okay.
And honestly, most of the stuff nowadays, these plastics that we're using are really neutral. Mm-hmm. So in order for this to actually really be dragging on the bottom, you've got to be in some pretty slow water.
Okay.
You know, the B&R beads that we've been running so much actually float.
Okay.
That's why I'm such a big fan of them.
Yeah. Which should work perfect for this setup.
Yep.
So we could send my son out, for example. Hudson could go out and cast both of these setups from the shore.
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. So if he's going to do this, Ben, we're facing out. Is he going up at 10? Is he going up at 11?
He's going up at about 15.
Okay.
Because by the time it gets down, it's going to be right in front of you.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And from there, you're either going to mend line to it or you're going to walk with it.
We're going to walk with it.
I would suggest mending line to it, letting it go 40, 50 yards, stop, pick up and recast, and work your way down river.
Okay.
That way you're not walking up and down the beach all day, let alone running into other people.
Well, when you're 16, you can do that. When you get a little older, you're not going to be wanting to walk up and down. You got a couple of other setups tied up down there. You want to go over any of those?
One more. Let's just get through the rods.
Okay.
For the float fishing, I'm running a 10.5 foot ProLite, 8 to 12 pound fishing rod. I like with the vertical floats. I like to run bait casters because it's easier to mend line down.
I'm going to pull it this way, Ben, so you can showcase that just a little right in front of you. Yep, you're good now.
So it's just a basic 10.5 foot, 8 to 12 pound medium action bait casting rod. This is a Corrado. I think it's a 201. The HG that this isn't the brand new ones. I've had this for a little while. I'd like the 10.5 feet with running the vertical floats, just to be able to help keep the line up off the water. And like I said, with the bait caster, you can hit the button, keep your thumb on the spool, and just really easy feed line to that float.
Yeah.
Mostly because we're fishing these out of the drift boat, right? I try to fish the gear down in front of the boat as much as I can. Yep. With the bobber dogging, I don't feel as much a need to keep, you can put a little pressure on that float. So I run a 9.5 foot, again, ProLite SVX, 8 to 12 pound spinning rod. Just because it's a little easier to cast. I'm running these out of the sled more than anything. I like the Shimano Nasis. I have to own 30 or 40 spinning reels. This is as close to a Corrado, or not a Corrado, CI4 as you're going to get without paying $300. I think I'm getting these reels for right around $100 a piece. They are absolutely bulletproof. I fish 250 days a year. 150 of them are out of that sled, and I'll get 3 seasons out of these reels. So basically, you're getting 550 days of fishing out of a spinning reel, and it's not being used gently all the time, right? I'm not, I mean, it's maybe 30% of the time I'm fishing with very accomplished anglers.
Yep.
So I've been really happy with them. They're lightweight. They got a little bit lighter when they went from the blue to the silver bodies. They have a tremendous drag system. They have the same drag system as the CI4s. I've really been really happy with them.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
Shimano, in my opinion, for spinning reels, has the nicest drag system available. I'm sure there's plenty of guys right now who are spinning in their seat, you know, but that's just what I've found. Everybody's got their favorite. It doesn't matter. It's a 2500 series spinning reel, holds plenty of line, especially with that braid. I mean, there's probably 200 yards on it, you know, 150 yards.
Connor, someone wants to come in the shop and get set up with a rod, a spinning reel, just like either of these with braid. What are they looking at?
Well, the Pro Lights are a little more expensive. Mm-hmm. I have these same exact rods and these same exact actions from $50 up to your $200, $300 rods.
Okay.
Reel wise, I have, you know, you're anywhere from probably like a reasonable spinning reel from Shimano. You're from 70 to, you know, the Stratix or the Vanfords are $240.
Okay.
The Corrados, I think, are $200. So yeah, it kind of just depends on how much you want to spend, but we can accommodate.
Low end 120, 130, high end, you know, $300, $400, $500.
And you're getting 150 to 200 yards of braid.
Yep.
So you're at, it's I think 12 cents a yard.
Yeah, and you guys put braid on reels.
I
you
can
guys
buzz
do all
the line
that.
on there, and I mean we could literally string it up and have it ready.
Yeah, and if you guys don't want to risk tying braid to mono, these guys will do it for you. In fact, I remember way back in 2016, I went in there and John, he did that for me for my first time. He's like, "Yeah, I'll show you how to do it." And I watched him and I learned. So
I have guys that come in just for me to tie a top shot, so it's not a big deal.
There you
the
go.
other thing I wanted to point out, I'm the same as Ben. I like running a bait caster with vertical jigs or vertical float fishing. You can also run these with spinning reels.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely.
A lot of guys will run this on a spinning setup. It's easier for them to cast.
Yep.
But like he was saying, once this float can get down river of me and I can flip that free spool and you could do a 200-yard float with it.
Okay.
So
Wouldn't suggest it.
no, it all depends on the circumstance, of course. But
You hook a fish that far away.
you're in trouble. I've seen it done.
Yeah,
maybe not
me
200.
too.
Maybe not 200 yards, but yeah, you can always run a spinning outfit with that too.
So I got a question for you, Ben. The setup that I grew up fishing, a little bit of hollow core lead
right here.
with about a 16-inch leader, a little corky and some yarn and some eggs. Does that even work anymore?
Yeah.
Is this,
Absolutely.
okay?
I'll be drift fishing this weekend. Like I said, it's just not as popular as it used to be.
Yeah.
People don't like tying gear.
Yeah.
You lose.
You know, learning
gear.
to drift fish for steelhead, doing it for salmon's one thing, but for steelhead, they have such a light grab to them sometimes. That's where back in the 80s and 90s when I started doing this, the real accomplished steelheaders were you would watch them and they would, you can learn to feel whether you're in cobble this big, you're in pea gravel this big, or in sand just by the feel of your rod tip, you know, and just learning to feel that pickup. It was the art, you know, and using floats, using bobber dogging, whatever it may be, is really kind of taking that guesswork out of it for people.
Okay.
Right. In my opinion, an egg bite while you're drift fishing is as good as it gets.
Yeah, the little
feeling them chew on that stuff,
Yep.
and you know, crossing your legs and closing your eyes, just trying to wait, and then you know, there's nothing better than being able to feel that. Although I can sit and watch Bobber Downs on YouTube until I'm blue in the face, you know, it all has its appeal. So it's, I just don't cover it as much because a lot of people aren't doing it anymore. And honestly, I mean, it's piece of pencil, let a swivel, and whatever you decide to drag behind it. Beyond that, we're going to have to get on the beach and to show you the rest.
Yep. Yeah, I love it. All right, we got a lot more gear out here. We don't need to go through all of it, but why don't you go over a couple of other things?
Let me go through the plug fishing real quick, and then we'll get into the gear. So this is another thing that a lot of people don't do so much anymore. It's more of a wild steelhead thing up here in the north end, but it's as exciting as steelheading can get, but it's also as boring as it can get.
Okay.
I mean, this is mainly done. I mean, you can do this on the beach. It's not done on the beach so much as we do it out of the drift boat. But especially with wild steelhead, they absolutely crush these plugs. And people look at it and think, oh yeah, you're pulling plugs, right? There's an art to it. There's an absolute art to plug fishing. Rod-wise, this is a 7.5 foot. It's a Lamaglass 1330/60. It's an old flame tip. You don't have to have this. It's, in my opinion, the nicest plug rods. Everybody laughs because they're old. These are made in the 80s, right?
So if you're sitting on one of these rods at home and you're watching this and you want to offload it, let me know.
Yeah. They're hard to find. I mean, you can find them still. You want something with a soft, fast tip, but that's going to load up about mid-rod. And reason for that being, when these fish grab these plugs, right, that it's sitting there, it's going hump, hump, hump like that. When they grab that plug, you don't want instant pullback. You want that fish to be able to grab the plug and get turned and load that rod up before it pulls on it. That gives that a chance for that hook to bury into the corner of its mouth, right? Not always ideal for fighting fish. I mean, you're going to get your butt kicked a little bit, but which is fun.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we all love,
yeah, that's a light rod.
It's a light rod, but it probably the stickiest plug rod I've ever used. Plug fishing, you're going to get hits, strikes that don't stick. It's going to happen, but this will eliminate a lot of it. Whether you're running 2 or 3 rods out of the drift boat, we'll set them out, say, hey, get them back. I run a line counter, get them back 55 feet. The middle rod always seems to stick forward a little more. I'll say put 55, 55, 51. You want all those plugs lined up, right? You want to create what we call a wall of death.
Yep.
So if they, as you're backing those fish down, and that's what you're going to do, you're going to start this at the top of the run and slowly just back those plugs down. If that plug runs into that fish, he can't get away from it, right? He goes this way, he runs into the plug. He goes this way, he runs into a plug, right? And what'll happen is you'll slowly back these fish down in the runs until they get to the point where they don't want to retreat anymore. And then they'll absolutely, man, it's fun to watch. Boy.
Just attack.
I mean, especially with these light little rods. I mean, it just corks them all the way down to the handle, and usually they're out of the water. You see them before you pick that rod up. It's that much fun, right?
Is there a rhyme or a reason for you running plugs versus the previous 2 setups? Is it
covers
water
a lot of
conditions?
water. It takes a lot of angler air out of things. I get people that have trouble casting or whatever in the boat, and like a wet, cold, windy day.
Yeah.
You don't want to be casting on, they put the plug right up. Guy rowing the boat's going to be warm, you know. And you can do it out of the sled too. Guys do it with side planers off the beach. They cast them. I would suggest running it on a drift fishing setup like this if you're going to cast them from the beach, just to make sure you're getting that plug down.
Okay.
Maglip makes a really, really versatile plug nowadays. These 3.5s and 3.0s, they have 100 different colors. I just was down at Bob's Sporting Goods last weekend. They had a buy one, get one sale, and I went in there, and here's a whole another 25 different, they call them Y codes, of new colors they come out with. I'm like, oh, great, that's what I need is another 50 plugs. Out we walked with them, right? It's a very versatile plug. Very little user error to it. Really easy to tune. You can see this one's had some wear and tear. This is the Dr. Death. It's probably the go all, do all steelhead plug. There's just this metallic pink with the black lip. This double eagle or whatever I believe they call it. This blue and red with silver. This one's... This is called Gold Member. This one actually started doing really well for me here a couple years ago. They come with 2 treble hooks on them, and Conner was asking me about this before the show. So, and actually I learned this from Sean, right? Of course, Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Analytical. But yeah, when they build these plugs, they don't just build the plug to swim. They build and balance these plugs according to having 2 hooks hanging off them, right?
Yeah.
So if you take one off, it throws the hook, the plug out of balance a little bit. So like Sean taught me, he says, you bend these things out straight, cut them off, and leave the shank from that other hook hanging on there to help keep the plug balanced. I removed both the treble hooks, put a barrel swivel on the back. This is a Mustad 1084 open eye Siwash, a big gun. This is a 2-aught.
Okay.
In my opinion, my favorite Siwash. Everybody's got their favorites, right? I run these on everything. My coho spinners, my spoons out in the salt water, my plugs here. They are as grabby and sticky as they come. Got a great little twist to them.
Which one is that again?
Mustad 1084 open eye Siwash.
Called the big gun.
Called the big gun.
Yep.
Okay.
Really, really good Siwash. I mean, if it gets stuck in a fish, it's 90%. It's going to stay in them. It's got a really long point to it. Like this one's pinched, but the barb to this is probably 3/8 of an inch below the tip. You know, I mean, it's got a long swing to that point to where once it gets in and gets turned, it takes a lot to throw this hook.
Yeah, and you can tell it's offset too.
It's really offset. Got a really nice bend to it. Again, has that bend that comes back to where it just doesn't slide out real easy. The other two plugs that I like to run, the Hot Shot. Lure Jensen started making these probably, I don't even know, 50s, 60s. This was the do-all, catch-all. This was the Maglip of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, right? Okay. I still run them today. They catch a lot of steelhead. You got to tune them a little bit more, right? They're a little bit smaller, but they still catch fish. Man, I always, usually I'll have two of these Maglips and either a Hot Shot or a tadpole out on one of the rods. As mentioned, the tadpole, the Heddon tadpole is the other one. I don't think Heddon's making them anymore.
I don't think so either.
I think I know a couple of people that I think have gotten the molds for them or making them. But they're still really available, right? You can buy them on eBay or Facebook or whatever. But these work a lot better in shallow water. Like if I'm fishing a run that's going to tail out into 1.5 foot of water, and we catch a lot of steelhead in 1.5 foot of water, especially with these plugs, these things really work well in shallower, faster water. Faster the water, like you get into these big, heavy runs, you really want to. Everybody thinks, oh, big, heavy water you want, big, huge, heavy plugs. You don't. That's when you actually want to go to smaller plugs because these Maglips, they get too heavy of water, it's going to cause them to flip over. So you go to something with a little smaller build to it, a little less grab to it, and it'll stay down.
Okay. So, Ben, you've got to remember, you guys, the steelhead is a trout that's behaving like a salmon, right? And so these steelhead have been out in the salt. They're coming back in the rivers, and these guys, unlike salmon, aren't coming back in the rivers to spawn and die. They're coming back to possibly spawn. But remind us, if you don't understand what a winter run steelhead is doing, are they actively feeding in the rivers?
No.
Okay.
No, just like a salmon, they're not actively feeding. And
so you're pissing them off with stuff like this.
Plugs are feeding off their aggression.
Okay.
Right? Okay. Steelhead are probably the most sight-orientated species that we target in the rivers. I mean, salmon, it's scent, sight, aggression.
Okay.
Steelhead, it's more sight and aggression and scent kind of take.
Okay.
Hatchery fish are better eaters than native fish.
Okay.
Native fish are very, very aggressive. And in my opinion, they're almost dumb.
Really?
Like, yeah, they are so aggressive, they're almost dumb. If they're unmolested and undisturbed in a hole, there's not too many things they're not going to grab. They're actually easy to catch.
Okay.
It's just finding them.
Yeah.
That's the hard part. That's what makes steelhead so special is the hunt, right? They don't hold in traditional water, salmon holding water, these big deep pools and back eddies. They won't sit in sand, right? They're a trout, not a salmon. Their gills are not as tough as a salmon.
Yep.
So when they sit in sand, that sand gets up in their gills and irritates the hell out of them. They almost can't breathe.
Okay.
So they just don't lay on sandy bottoms very often. The fun part about the hunt is, they could be behind any rock any log, any little seam, anywhere in the river from 1.5 feet of water to 8 feet of water. They could be anywhere, right? To where a salmon, more than likely, they're going to be in the back eddies. The pocket,
out of resistance.
Path of least resistance. And they school up real good. Steelhead generally don't school up quite like salmon do, Very rare that you're going to find 150 steelhead in a hole.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
I mean, it happens, but...
They're moving.
They're moving.
Yeah.
And they don't come in the numbers that salmon do either. So. Right.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So we got gear. Man, this has been really informative. I feel like I want to actually start river fishing now. Yeah. Might have to get back to doing that. So we got gear. You got a couple of things down there. You got some setups already tied up. You want to go over that real briefly, and then we'll wrap this thing up.
So bead fishing has really taken over a lot of steelheading. They're very efficient, easy to use, got a bunch of different colors. It's probably 60% of my arsenal now. And basically what I've got here is 2 different ways you can rig these beads. The first one, this is in B&Rs in particular. Yep. I brought this to open this up so he doesn't have to.
You got the setup.
Yeah, this is a B&R Pro Pack, I believe he calls it. Brandon puts together a really nice set of beads. In these neat little boxes, man.
Good Lord.
If you ain't got one, I mean, this one's been picked through. You can tell the sweet pink cherry ran out. Yeah. So this is, and they come with these stoppers that B&R sells.
T-stop.
Right? T-stops,
yeah. They're great.
They're absolutely dummy proof. They're easy to use. They slide on just like a rubber bobber stop. I like this overhand knot just because I have to tie a lot of leaders. And it's a lot quicker than tying an egg loop. It's basically just a simple little make your loop in the line, whip it over, tie a knot into it, trim the end off, slide the loop into the hook, kind of wrap it over it. Maybe we'll do that too.
Yeah, we'll do a couple. What is it called in case you want to YouTube it?
It's just an overhand loop knot. I don't even know if there's a name
overhand
for it.
That's what I call it.
Or you could do your traditional,
Yep, or you can put your regular bait loop.
Nice part about the overhand knot is it stops that T-stop.
It does stop the T-stop because they will slide a little bit. I mean, they're designed to not need it.
And you put any scent on that bead.
Yep, and that T-stop starts sliding around, man. But basically, most of these beads have holes in them. You're going to thread it down the line. I always like to give the T-stop a little kiss. Just get it wet, and the bead slides on there. That's just that much easier, and disappears into it just like that. And then the T-stop will actually, you can set how far away from that hook you want the bead. I prefer
2 fingers, maybe 1.5 of yours.
Yeah. Just 1.5, 2 fingers away from the hook.
What size? Size 2?
This is size 2 right here. This is just a regular Gamakatsu, although I have switched over to
Mustad.
Mustad. We'll talk about those in a minute.
Yep.
The other way, now when I'm side drifting out of the boat, it's all T-stops, right? Just because they're quick and easy, and it takes a lot to suck that bead over that T-stop.
Yeah,
it really does. The other way I've been doing this, and a lot of people do it this way, and I'll explain why. Is one of those Mustad bead hooks. This is a 3 millimeter glass bead that I don't know if you guys can see this or not. Let's put it
there. It is right there.
Right there.
Yep.
That is tied into this, and there's a lot of tutorials on YouTube right now. I'm not going to explain that knot. It's really easy to tie. That you'll tie with your 2 fingers above the hook. And the cool part about these is once this is tied on, you're stuck with that color until you cut this off and slide that bead off and slide this one back on. Although there is a way to slide them on and off. I'm just not going to get into it because let Brandon have his thing. With this, you don't have to use the hole in the bead. Basically, you're just going to take the hook, bury it, run it right up the hook like this, slide it right over the top of that little glass bead, and the little glass bead, let me get in front of my shirt again, there we go, just sits right at the base of that hook. The cool part about it is I can put a client up in the front of the drift boat, give them 4 or 5 different colors, let them run this through twice, and say, okay, switch it out. You just pull it right back through, slide it right back off, grab another color.
Oh, wow. There you go.
Put it right back on, and you're fishing again, right?
Now, would you do that with a plastic bead, or does it not work as well with the plastic bead?
Like a hard bead?
No, plastic bead where you're sliding on the inside here. That bead.
What about? No, you need to use a hard bead for this.
Okay.
Yep.
You said
it's plastic. No,
okay.
these are plastic.
I
not
thought you were.
glass bead.
Okay, gotcha.
It's plastic. Yep.
I just was wondering if there was a
3
reason.
millimeter, 4 millimeter. A couple of different companies make them.
Radical Glow makes a clear one.
Yeah. Elevated Tackle makes some. And I won't, people do it, but I won't just use any old bead. The reason that I buy these ones that are made to do this is they have taken and put them in a tumbler and softened the edges, because this knot is actually tied around the middle of the bead. And if you pull on it too much with sharp edges, they're going to start breaking.
Gotcha.
So
makes sense.
Really, really efficient way for being able to swap colors in and out.
100%.
Yeah.
I like this one.
Yeah.
And the nice thing about beads too is you can fish these, and you have 4 different sizes here to fish in different water. Low clear water, use smaller. Dirty water, high water, you can use bigger beads. Yeah. I mean, you can.
It's an endless cookie jar.
For sure.
Yeah. And you're running 12 pound. Yeah. Light leaders.
Depends on where I'm at, honestly.
Low clear.
Like when I'm fishing for hatchery fish, it's usually 12. If I'm running a double bead rig, I'll do 12 and 10. Again, you're getting the lighter line as you go down. That way you're not breaking everything off when something gets hung up. When I start fishing for native fish, like I was tying leaders last night with these little beads in it with 15.
Yeah.
A little bit bigger, more aggressive fish. I like a little heavier. And with that fluorocarbon, man, they can't see it.
Yeah.
And like I said, steelhead are so, especially native steelhead, are so sight orientated. They're not real line shy. I mean, if they'll come up and grab a 6-inch peak worm, I don't think a 0.017 thick piece of fluorocarbon's going to scare them off.
Right.
Hand me that box of tackle here real quick. Or actually, Ben, just turn it around for the viewers. Look at this. I mean, you got all different colors and sizes, a lot of orange and red and pink.
Yep. Those are the 3 basic colors.
But you got a lot of different sizes there.
So, and you know, B&R makes a really great bead. Like I said, I'm a big fan of it. Brock with Fisherman's Gold started putting some beads out last year. I did really well with. He's got some really good colors. Elevated Tackle makes some Steelhead stalkers. I mean, there's so many beads on the market right now. It just depends on what tickles your fancy.
Yep. Right. And then I look, some of those have a little bit of like a white texture to it. Is that glow or is that no?
No, it's just mottled.
Okay.
Kind of resembles skein.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. I love it. All right, let's wrap with this. And you kind of brought this up earlier, Conner. Are you using scent? So if you're not using bait like shrimp or prawn or eggs, are you using any scent with these?
No, not much.
I don't. I mean, a little bit on the beads once in a while. I don't put them on my jigs because I don't want to ruin, get the marabou stuck together or something. I don't put it on plugs because they're angrily beating on it, right? I don't on the worms. A yarny, this is something else we didn't talk about. These are yarnies, right? This is basically just a ball of yarn on the hook.
Yeah.
So it's basically doing the same thing as the bead. Yarnies, we'll dip them like I'll put some egg scent on them or something. But again, and you can catch steelhead on bait, right?
Yeah.
Like I said, the hatchery fish, we tend to target with the bait more than the wild fish, but they are so sight orientated. It's not a do or die with me. Okay. I mean, I know guys that when they're plug fishing, they'll wrap a piece of coon shrimp on the belly of the plug, or that's all per choice. Yeah. Right? If I can catch them without the bait, it makes
that reminds me of the clown bobber I used to use. I used to make that clown bobber. You know what I'm talking about? That clown yarn. That's just crazy. Okay, so let's wrap with this. Any of this gear you can get down at John's. We're early December. I think, I was down there the other day. I think I got 2 gift cards from you guys already for gifts.
Oh, you just gave away my Christmas present. What are you doing?
Hey, well, hopefully Hudson's not watching this, but no, I just helped one of your customers with a mortgage, and we closed on his mortgage, and so I got him a $100 gift card to John's. So, any deals, any sales? I know you got some stuff going on. You want to talk about John's real quick in the month of December?
Yeah, I do Christmas gift cards. So every $50 you spend, you get $10 off. So $50 gift card, you're buying for $40. $100, you're buying for $80.
I thought Devin was just giving me a deal because I knew you guys. What?
No, he actually was pocketing the
I love that.
Yeah. I just got done with the Black Friday deal, which if you come in, I'll probably still honor it. I was doing 15% off. I have some kokanee rods that I have a lot of that I want to get rid of. Okay. All of my reels that I've been doing, I've been giving 15% off. I usually am going to do a Thursday, Friday deal. I'll do that the whole month of December. Okay. I was hunting the last couple months, so I hadn't been on top of it, but I don't know anything off the top of my head right now. But this Thursday, Friday, or this Friday, Saturday, we're for sure going to have a deal of the day. So
this is a good time. If you're listening, great time to come down, save some money on a gift card, but get a gift card. It makes for a great gift. And then Conner and I were talking about this earlier. We've been planning out a January, February, March content series. You guys are going to love, for starting with winter blackmouth out in the salt, leading right into resident coho to shrimping, to Chinook fishing and coho fishing, but I think we're gonna call it hot spots. But give you guys like 10 to 15 minute tutorials on how to fish for an exact salmon in an exact location. So stay tuned on that. That's going to be really great. And do me a favor. You guys have been so helpful when I ask you to do this. Go before you finish watching this, go to Google John's Sporting Goods, and you'll see his Google business. Do me a favor. It'll say review. Go there and leave him a review. It's like 7:30 at night right now. We've all worked all day long, and they're here giving out some of their best tips for free. Go leave a review and just tell Google how great Conner is and how grateful you are for Conner and giving his information. And then while you're at it, it'll take you 1.5 more minutes. I want you to Google Mixed Metals Outdoors, and that's Ben's business. You guys, by leaving a 5-star review, what it does is it raises them up in the rankings. So when people are looking for fishing gear, fishing guides, they pop up, and that's a way that you can, for free, help thank these guys. So really appreciate that. I really appreciate you guys taking time out of your day. And then lastly, Ben, you're booking winter steelhead, right?
I am.
Okay, tell us about that.
Starting after Christmas, I'm taking a couple weeks off. I got some fab stuff and honeydew stuff and family stuff that's going to go on. We'll start in with the hatchery steelhead stuff locally and down in the Grays Harbors rivers. That will go on through January. Like I said, we've got some new old opportunity down there this year that I'm really excited for. We're gonna kill some steelhead down there this year, and then come into February, sock Skagit. And I mean, that's as pristine and unique as a steelhead fishery comes. Big, heavy, native steelhead in one of the most beautiful places on earth. It is probably my most heartfelt piece of water. I'm really excited, because it's home. Right? Yeah. So I've still got quite a few openings left, man. I would love to get you guys out. All this stuff we're talking about, it's going to get thrown out in the water. You got questions, or even advanced anglers, man. You just want to take a day off from rowing, whatever, man. I love those days, right? It's less work for me. Or even if you want to row my boat, but yeah, man, please hit me up. I do this because I love taking people fishing. I had a great conversation with a new client on the way here today, and I've never even seen the guy before. We talked for 45 minutes. Yeah. And so I just love doing this and getting other people involved. So.
Yeah, you get out on the water with Ben, and you're going to find out real quickly that he absolutely loves. If I didn't know any better, I'd think it was your first year guiding because you're so excited to be out there at 4 in the morning, freezing cold, pouring down rain, and you're just loving life, and you're not. You're a pro. This is just what you're made to do, and you do it really well.
I've got if you want to get rid of your husbands for a day, I've got gift cards, for Christmas. Everybody loves a free fishing trip for Christmas.
And that's it. You guys sometimes, I'm a money guy, right? And so there's nothing I dislike more than my wife getting me a Christmas gift, and she means well by it. She won't watch this, so I don't have to worry about this. But she means well, and she buys me these new shoes or these new clothes, and I'm like, you just spent all this money on stuff that I know it made you feel good, but I don't need it. Go give me a trip with Ben, or go buy me. And she started doing this, getting me gift cards from John's. But maybe give your partner, your spouse, a hint that you'd rather have this than something else. But I will tell you this. One of the ways that I became a decent fisherman is I went out and I hired guys like Ben, and I was very clear saying, hey, I have a son. I want to get better when I take him out on the salt and I take him fishing, and I want to hire you, and I'm going to leave you a really nice tip, but I want you to teach me. There's nothing wrong. Guys, swallow your pride a little, and you can go hire these guys and just say, teach me, and they'll show you and they'll teach you. And actually, Ben gets a lot out of that because, hey, now when you go out and you have success, you're like, hey, I learned a lot of it from Ben. I learned a lot of it from Conner. So, I
do it.
Yeah.
I have 2 days booked over on the Olympic Peninsula. A guy I've been fishing with for 10 years. If anything, again, I don't have to row for a day. I can relax and fish. I take a buddy with me, but every time I go with him, I pick up something from him, So that's the cool part about this.
Yeah.
It never stops.
Never.
Conner was talking to me. He's like, "Man, you've been catching steelhead for over 40 years." I said, "Yeah, I sure have." Every time I put my boots on, it's a learning experience.
Yep. I love that. So you're going to do two things, you guys. You're going to go leave these guys a review, a 5-star review. It would mean the world to them. Number two, you're going to stay tuned. You're either going to go out and book Ben, or you're going to stay tuned for some of our next pieces of content that are really going to help you. And then lastly, Ben committed. He said he'd do this for us, but we're going to get you a really short video on how to make a couple of these knots, these braid to mono, and then that, what'd you call that knot over the hook? Other than the egg loop knot, the other one that you like to use?
I don't know what it's called with the little bead.
Yeah.
Oh, the overhand.
The overhand knot.
The overhand knot.
Which is really easy. I'll tie both of them. I'll do the overhand knot and the little glass bead knot.
So we'll post those in the group. We'll get those up for you guys.
Yep.
Hey, appreciate you taking the time. This was a long one. This was a good one and a fun one. Hey, do me a favor, book Ben, dress warm, bring your camera. You'll have the time of your life. This is a fishery that you'll talk about for years like I do. So this was great. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Dan.
All right.
Thanks, Dan.
We'll see you here in another week or so. Bye for now.
Later.